We continue on to our weekly segment now, Korea Book Club, where we explore the world of Korean literature and books through notable recent works in Korean or in English translation. And to help us do that, we have joining us in the studio today, cultural essayist Colin Marshall, host of the podcast Korean 한국, and author of the essay collection 한국 요약 금지. Colin, hello, it's great to see you again.
Glad to be here, Jung-ho.
Now, I understand that you have something a little different for us this week, a picture book for young readers. We've looked at children's books in the past, but it has been a while, and it's a first for you, Colin, with us. This book is also interesting because it is in Korean and English simultaneously, published just earlier this year. Can you tell us more about it?
Yes, this book tells quite an old story, the traditional folktale of Gyonu and Jingnyo. And if you just say those two names, the names alone, practically everyone in this country will know exactly what you're talking about, in much the same way as if you'd mentioned, say, Romeo and Juliet in English. And both have been described as tales of star-crossed lovers, but things work out rather better for Gyonu and Jingnyo than they do in Shakespeare. In any case, there are plenty of modern cultural parallels to be drawn between these stories as well, not least the frequency of their adaptation. So name any medium you like, from stage plays to films to YouTube cartoons. Gyonu and Jingnyo have appeared in it, whatever it may be. But I suspect that most recent generations in Korea first encounter them in picture books. And indeed, it's a picture book that we have today. Love on the Bridge of the Milky Way, written by Gwang Min, illustrated by Park Son-bok, and it's come out just this past January.
So, Love on the Bridge of the Milky Way.
Yes.
Now, because it is such a classic title, there have been English versions before. Normally, when told in English, the tale of Gyonu and Jingnyo gets titled something like The Cowherd and the Weaver Girl. But this book has opted for a rather more poetic interpretation, shall we say.
Indeed.
And as you said, that's important because the book is in both Korean and English. Was the text translated into English or originally written in English? Do we know?
It's somewhat hard to say because, as you say, it's in both languages at once. Right there on the cover, we have the title also in Korean, 은하수 다리위 사랑. And that bilingualism continues throughout the book, all the way to the back jacket flap, which offers an explanation of the Korean tradition of eating pajeon and drinking makgeolli on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, as well as an explanation of what pajeon and makgeolli are.
Right, I see. So it is a book that has an international audience very much in mind then.
Right, Korean and non-Korean.
Yes, but let's take a step back for a second because we haven't actually explained the story yet. And I suspect that for many readers, especially non-Korean readers, this book will be their introduction to the story of Gyonu and Jingnyo. So you can remind us of what the story is about.
Yes, so here we go. So the king of the sky, the ruler of the universe, the great jade emperor of heaven, or whatever you want to call him, has a daughter called Jingnyo, or Weaver Girl. When Jingnyo comes of age, her father's court puts forth as a potential husband a young man called Gyonu, or cattle herder. And they get more than they bargained for, it turns out. So deeply do the two fall in love that after their marriage, they begin to neglect the very work they were named to do, the weaving and the herding. As punishment, the ruler casts each of them to opposite ends of the Milky Way, Jingnyo to the west and Gyonu to the east. He does allow them one meeting per year on the aforementioned 7th day of the 7th lunar month, but the tears these lovers shed on every such occasion are so copious that they flood the earth, ruining its crops. So tired of being left with nothing to eat as a result, the magpies and ravens of the world decide to come together and form a bridge across the Milky Way each year, easing the emotional stress of the reunions between Jingnyo and Gyonu, the mythological personifications, by the way, of the stars Altair and Vega.
Right, so the story sort of explains the natural phenomena of the seasons then, like why the summer monsoon or 장마 happens. There are old Greek myths like this too, of course. But it's also a story inspired by the stars in the night sky, as you said, which, of course, people all over the world have already seen and incorporated into their myths as well. Other Asian cultures have their own versions of Jingnyo and Gyonu, right?
They do, and as with many Korean folktales, China has its equivalent. Let's see if I can pronounce these. I do study Chinese, but pretty lackadaisically. Zhenu and Nyolang, whose meetings are celebrated each year at the Qixi Festival. And at the same time, Japan observes Tanabata, or Hoshimatsuri, the Star Festival, which originates from the story of Orihime and Hikoboshi. And of course, summer in Korea would be incomplete without the Chilseok Festival, which sometimes gets described in English as the Korean Valentine's Day. All this makes for a clear object lesson in how one myth takes on different dualities, different qualities, when reinterpreted by different cultures across East Asia, much as the Greek gods were all renamed when introduced into ancient Roman civilization.
Right, and also when a folktale gets repeated generation after generation, it does tend to change a little with each telling. So what's distinctive about the interpretation in this latest picture book version, Love on the Bridge of the Milky Way?
As I say, this is a bilingual text, and the content of the English and the Korean do differ slightly from one another. Now, mostly that's because of explanatory asides in the English. After the introduction of gyonu, for example, comes the parenthetical addition that gyon means lead, wu means cow, as it says in the English. And any telling of the story at book length, even a book as short as this one, has to add details of its own. And here they include a trip to the beach that Jingnyo and Gyonu take at the peak of their happiness. Later, their inevitable separation occurs because, as the English text has it, they were from different places. But the Korean text on the facing page says, 신분의 차이가 너무 크기 때문에, which suggests that the problem had less to do with their places of origin and more with their social caste. A natural enough problem to arise, I suppose, when the husband is a cowherd and the wife is the princess of the universe. But
Right.
I should emphasize that Love on the Bridge of the Milky Way is not in any sense an update of the story of Jingnyo and Gyonu. Even the illustrations take care to include the hanbok and the hanok and the hwangso, or rather oxen of olden days, the complete milieu, you could say, of the past. But what might be compelling for young readers is that they all appear to have been created, these illustrations, by an artist of their own generation. You know, the characters are rendered with the kind of exuberance, even humor, one associates with youth, or perhaps with that one classmate we all grew up with who was especially good at art,
Right.
drawing during homework time, you know. There's real skill evident, though, in the watercoloring of the backgrounds, as well as in the choice to keep the figures of the protagonists themselves almost entirely monochromatic, so that they pop out from their colorful surroundings.
Right, there is a charming crudeness to the drawings.
Indeed.
As if drawn by a young child, but it is surrounded by, as you said, wonderful backdrops and illustrations. So this is another endearing take on the enduring folk tale, I would say. But it is just one of many, right? There are many more that we could discover.
There are, and one of the advantages of folktales themselves is they're all, by definition, so old as to be in the public domain, which means anybody can get as creative with them as they would like. A simple internet search will thus turn up a host of different versions you can read, listen to, or watch. But I'd recommend first performing that search on the website of KBS World, because there you'll find an illustrated text and a streamable reading from the program Once Upon a Time in Korea, among dozens of other productions of Korean folktales, all, of course, in English.
Yes, that's a nice little cross-promotion of the KBS World Radio content. We'll make a media man out of you yet.
Excellent.
Yes, like the KBS World Once Upon a Time in Korea episode, Love on the Bridge of the Milky Way is available in both English and Korean, in one, in fact. This could also, I guess, mean that it's useful learning material for students of the Korean language.
When I was starting out in Korean, I'd sometimes hear complaints from other learners that there wasn't much reading material pitched at a suitable level of difficulty. The exercises in textbooks were too simple, and the actual books and news articles for Koreans were too hard. But if you've made some progress on your own Korean journey, the simple and clear prose of Love on the Bridge of the Milky Way may be just right. And if you ever get confused about the meaning of a sentence, you can just look over to the English page. That said, some students being introduced to Korea do find that they get their fill of old folktales rather quickly, but if you approach them in the right context, they can open up whole realms of culture to you. Not just the culture of Korea, but also that of Asia in its entirety.
Well, it sounds like it could be worth checking out. I believe it's only available in Korea for now, but hopefully, considering that it is also in English, it will be available more widely in the future. Once again, it's called Love on the Bridge of the Milky Way by Gwang Min, and that was our pick for Korea Book Club this week. Colin, thank you for the review as ever, and we'll catch up with you again soon. Take care.
See you next time, Jang-ho.
And that is where we're going to wrap up our show for today. We'll be back same time tomorrow, so do just again then for more news, views and reviews from Korea. Till then, we hope you have a wonderful day. I've been your host, Kwon Jang-won, and thank you as always for listening. Goodbye.